Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Smart Trucking Live. Thank you all for joining us. I see Josh Peterbilt 389 in the audience. I see Kelly Patterson and his shy girlfriend, Mary. Mary, don't be shy. Chat with us. Thank you for joining us. Soft Skill, Adam Bennett. Adam, I was reading your comments there a few minutes ago, and I gather by looking that you found a safe place to anchor it for the afternoon. Probably the best bet. It's winter times here. Winter's upon us. If you don't feel good about the roads, get off the roads. And you can get off the roads and chat back and forth with us here anyway. So that's what we want. Joe S. is here. Who else have we got? Grilled Mortal is here. Always get a kick out of him. Controlled Chaos is here. Truck's running good this week. Glad to hear that. Having a low coolant problem. I think my EGR valve is leaking, or it could just even be the sensor. Controlled Chaos. I've had that happen to mine even, so should be easy to figure out anyway. If there's drips on the ground in the morning, could be the EGR valve. If there's no drips and the coolant levels topped up, it's probably the sensor. So. Mr. Buckle Up is here. Jay Cohen is here. I'm sick, and I can relate to that. Sick of washing the salt off my rig. When's summer? No, I know, man. I feel your pain. I know what you mean. Who else have we got? Tom Jones. Hello, sir. Thank you for joining us. Wild Beard Trucking, the famous YouTube guy. Glad you could join us today. Hope all's going well with you there, Wild Beard Trucking. Good to see you. Trucker Hershey. Shah Hussein. I just saw? Woody Bryan. Paul Hudson. Orlando Zuniga. How's it going, man? Michael Mueller. Snowing like heck south of Indianapolis. Michael, from what I'm seeing here, it's snowing damn near everywhere today. So everyone just gotta wind her down and be careful. There's snow all across the country. SoCal Sandman, thank you for joining us, sir. Glad to see you here. We've got a DOT FMCSA compliance guy here, specialist. Well, I better.
How do you know it's a guy?
Or a girl. I'm sorry. Got to remember to be gender neutral, so I apologize. But yes, so I'll have to be careful not to tell too many FMCSA jokes, I guess, although I'm tempted. Trucker Herald's in Phoenix. Man, I wish I was in Phoenix. Steve Smith, hi from southeast Wisconsin. Mike Service, thank you for joining us. Josh Alito, thank you for joining us. Did you see the new 389 digital dash? Yes, I did. I'm still kind of humming and hawing about that dash. Like, I like the digital readout thing, but it just kind of takes away from the classic look of the dash, and that was a big thing for me. So I'm undecided. I gotta think about whether I'm gonna like that or not. Something else I've been looking at here recently too, and we're going to talk about trucks today on the stream, if we can possibly keep focused on trucks. But I've been studying the new Kenworth 990, which some feel is slated to replace the 900. But I've decided that I'm not a big 990 fan. Still looks like a big International to me. Like the 900 way better. Shannon's here. Good to see you, Shannon. Hope you're well. Hope everything's good.
We have a couple questions.
Cassius Puckett. He's in Reno, and they got snow in Reno. I have exciting news. I received a letter from the FMCSA about being on the driver's panel, and they informed me that after reviewing my application that I was perfect not to be on the panel. Oh man, don't do that to me. We're just at the start of the stream. That's hilarious. You know what? I bet you I would have been another perfect candidate not to be on that. I see they finally picked the panel. I took a quick scan, recognized Todd Spencer's name. Everybody knows who he is. But I didn't recognize any of the other names on the list. But just I did a quick scan and search, and they all appear to actually be drivers, which is what they had promised, which is what they'd said they were going to do. They weren't, fleet managers or something like that. So I've got big hopes. I've got big hopes for this panel. I hope they listen to them. I see they better step up the production of the electric trucks. Joe Biden's already chopping back on the oil and gas production here, so he's kind of forcing the hand. He's a green guy, and he did a lot of chopping here in the first week of oil and gas. So Tesla and Nikola better speed up if they're going to keep up with Smokin' Joe here. Jonathan Mestro from Mobile, Alabama. Glad you could join us, Jonathan. Find me one. Robert, there's snow in Virginia. There's no snow in Virginia yet. Well, that's someplace good.
What is your favorite truck brand now?
Pardon? What is my favorite?
Truck?
Oh,
Trucks.
either the Kenworth or the Pete.
Say the question.
What is my favorite truck model? I'd be hard pressed to choose between the W900 and the Pete. I've had both. I like them both for different reasons. We're actually doing a video on that upcoming soon. But they both have things I like about them. The Kenworth, I like the cab better. It's quieter. It's better insulated. The Pete, I like the lines of it better. It's lighter. What I used to do was spec the identical truck, Kenworth and Pete, and I'd play one dealership off against another, and whoever came in with the best price was usually what I would go for. But I like them both. I'd be hard pressed to pick a favorite out of the two. Do I think driving underpowered trucks makes you tired? That's from James Conkle. Yes, James, I most certainly do. I think that's a huge factor. Drivers have a hard time staying alert when they're going up the hill at 35 miles an hour or less. Yes, if the truck's underpowered, definitely lulls your senses. You've got to be engaged with the drive, keep up with the drive. I think anyway. Fred Besmer, I better buy that Nikola. Hey Fred, I looked at the stock. It looks like it's hovering about $28 a share. So it really, it's really holding steady. It only peaked at 30 there back when it's at its high point. So I think you're still doing all right. But yeah, like I'm pulling for the Nikola here anyway. I kind of like the look of it better. But I was reading today in California they've come up with some new high-tech battery that will charge in like an hour for these trucks rather than like a 6 or 8 hour charge. So that'll be curious to see what happens there. Bull and Bulldog says if they start running electric trucks, I'm out. Yeah, I don't think you'll be the only one there either. Chef Matt's here with us. Mechanical analog gauges have a lot better reading in unstable conditions of that which is monitored by the given gauge, which digital instruments completely miss. Chef Matt, I'm chewing that around, but I think you're right. I believe that's correct. That's a huge point. That's good. The only digital gauge I've got in my truck is one that the factory installed, and it's the outside temperature gauge, and it doesn't flux back and forth. But yeah, that would drive me nuts if the gauge is all blinked and flashed all the time. How do I feel about a 2010 or newer ProStar with a Cummins? Chris Hughes. Oh boy, I'd be very careful, Chris. I'd look into the history pretty carefully. It would depend on what model of Cummins it was. I'd be pretty leery. I'd be worried. Could turn out to be fine. But definitely run the thing down to Cummins and have them plug it in and have a good look at it over the computer. I noticed, speaking of trucks, I noticed that the 2022 Pete's are starting to come into the large dealerships already. Seems a little odd. We're into 2021, less than a month, and the 2022s are already coming in. Peterbilt always seemed to do that. I thought that was kind of goofy, but that's how they do it. Doug Ackerman, Dave, what's the average horsepower of today's trucks? The average horsepower is up in today's trucks from what it used to be, and I'd have to say the average horsepower is in around the 450 mark these days. And there are all sorts of carriers are recognizing that they've got to put more power in the trucks. The power isn't costing as much the way it used to. It used to be you needed more power, you needed more liters, more cubic inches. That's not necessarily true anymore. They can flash these motors and get more and more horsepower out of them. So, and it's not uncommon to see 500 or more horsepower now in company trucks, which was kind of unheard of in my day, but nice to have. And like we were saying earlier, keeps the drivers awake. Shannon's asking about UPS up in Canada, or the UPS purchase by TFI up here, which is really something. They've purchased, or not FedEx, UPS Ground, basically, UPS Freight. And I didn't realize initially, and I was reading today, that UPS Freight division is unionized. So I'm sure they'll have some growing pains while TFI, which is not unionized, gets used to dealing with that. TFI, for people that don't know, it's a Canadian business basically that accumulates carriers as an investment strategy rather than actually run the trucks themselves. So they'll buy a trucking company and leave the management in place and just hope that the stock improves on it. It seems to be their modus operandi.
What do you think about buying old trucks?
What do I think about buying old trucks? It would depend on the truck every single time. If if I was buying an old truck, I'd want to know the history of it. Like, I wouldn't be afraid to buy an older truck from somebody I knew that had it from new and had taken care of it well. And I have done that a couple times. I bought used trucks twice that way from friends that were trading up. But if it just to go onto a dealer's lot and pick one out, I'd be leery. Generally, people don't get rid of trucks unless there's something wrong with them. So used trucks, as a rule, scare me. Sorry? Oh, Bradley Weaver. Thank you for the donation, Bradley. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. It helps us out here. Helps us stay on the air. Thank you. Can you get up to highway speed with 410 rear ends? Andrew Mitchell. Yeah, it helps to have like big rubber and a tall transmission, like an 18-speed. And even so, these days you're churning pretty high RPM on the motor with a set of 410 gears. And the thought process these days is most engines now, you want them to turn lower revs because you want them to last longer and use less fuel. So yeah, depending on how fast you drive too. If you're in Saskatchewan, and your top speed is 65 miles all day long, and you had an 18-speed with big rubber, you'd probably be just fine. That's because they're good gears for pulling trains. Like, there are a lot of Super Bs in Saskatchewan, and they'd be ideal for doing that. Cassius says, I don't see electrical trucks being the way of the future of the trucking industry. I don't know, Cassius. I think sooner or later it'll come. I think it'll be much later. But the government sure are pushing, both Canada and the U.S. now with the new president in the States are both pushing like green energy, electric cars and trucks. So it's on their agenda. So it'll be, it'll be a tough call. Mind you, that could change in 4 years when the administration changes again. But I think we're going to see it sooner or later, and probably later.
Josh, Peterbilt. Dave, what's more reliable for Peterbilt 389, a Cummins X15 or a PACCAR MX13?
That's a tough question, Josh. And you can get good engines and problem engines from any manufacturer. I've said in the past that I would probably go with the PACCAR engine just because it often extends your warranty period, and I always like that. But Cummins now is into the game finally again, and they were a great engine. They've just had trouble with the emissions. Everybody's had trouble with the emissions, but and honestly, for resale, Josh, you'd probably be better with the Cummins under the hood at the end of the day. So tough call. Good question.
Doug has asked what CAT scales are for.
You gotta repeat that.
Doug has asked what CAT scales are for.
CAT scales are for weighing your gross and your axle weights, and you shouldn't be going trucking without them. They're an invaluable tool because you want to know how your weight is distributed, and you want to know that because you want to be legal, because every time you cross a set of scales, that's what they're looking at. So you don't want to get tickets and fines, but also importantly, you want proper weight distribution for braking in bad weather, for instance. Like on a day like today when the ground's all snow covered, you want enough weight on the trailer axles to be able to get a good grip and not walk out beside you and pull out to pass. So, but CAT scales are for checking axle and gross weights. Very important to learn.
Wildbeard Trucking asks, do you think the truck stops will change to charging stations?
I think eventually that they're going to have to. Now, who's going to foot the bill for that is a good question. But I think you'll have to. And if you'll remember back a few years ago when they were all on the propane hydrogen kick, all those truck stops put in stations for that stuff. Never got off the ground. But so, yeah, I think you'll see truck stops invest in electric charging systems. I think it's going to be the way we go. Just replaced the hood on my 388 Pete, 20 grand. Wow. Lucky insurance paid for all but the deductible. Yeah, truck parts are not cheap anymore.
Timothy Platt, I wished large cars with big cats would make a comeback. You and the Lettuce King too.
You and me both, and the Lettuce King as well, who I was chatting with just yesterday, and he's up north working on another big ride. But yeah, I don't think you'll see those days come back, and a lot of it is because of the price of fuel, and fuel's continuing to climb. They were really nice to drive, but I think they've had their day. AJ Deere says, doesn't TFI own many massive companies? Yes, they do. They're by volume, they're the biggest trucking company up here, and one of the biggest North America wide, because they own all sorts of companies and carriers. Yeah, they're huge.
Jonathan Mestral. Hey, Kathy. Hey, Dave. Did you get a chance to watch what I sent you guys? Yes, I did. And I forgot to send it down to our stream station so we could have showed that today. That was really good.
Damn it. We'll have to get that for next time.
Thank you for the donation. Much appreciate the support. Thank you.
Yes,
yeah,
Jana.
it was funny. I will make sure it's here for next week. Sorry about that. It was a good one.
Thank you, Jonathan. Appreciate it. Woody Bryant, I haven't hit a CAT scale all year. Woody, you're hauling diapers or something? Something real, air freight maybe? It's kind of nice because scaling adds up pretty quick. And so if you're hauling like balloon freight, that's money you're saving. My Russian dad drove a Volvo for 9 years and got a brand new 389 last week. Took a while to convince him that that was better. that's from Buttered Tank. I'd like to take those first couple of rides with your dad just to get his impressions of that. It would be quite a change.
Hassan has asked, have you ever drove all night? Now,
Yes.
Tell the truth.
Yes, I have, and I didn't like it very much. A couple times, if this is full disclosure, a couple times I did it in the days of paper logs because I was on a mission, or my lettuce buyer wanted the load quick, or something like that. I've done it a few times. Didn't care for it, but I'd have to say my personal best one time was I got up in Morris, Illinois in the morning and delivered in Las Vegas, Nevada at lunchtime the next day. I think that was probably my personal best. But I wasn't a happy camper, but I got the load off anyway. Not something I'd recommend anybody do. Michael Mueller, TFI owns CFI. I did not know that. You're kidding me. I'm surprised by that because CFI is based out of Missouri, are they not? I did not know that. Wow. Why are glider kits not more popular? Doug Ackerman. Doug, by the time you add up everything it takes money-wise to make a good glider kit anymore, it's adding up to quite a bit of money, because the glider kit, you'd think that they'd give you a break on the truck when it came with no engine, but they don't give you that much of a break. So by the time you take your old, like in my case, my old Cat, I talked to Caterpillar about rebuilding my old one, and they want $40,000 to rebuild my old engine. So by the time I stuff that in a new glider kit, which is running about 180, you're looking at, in some cases, you're looking at more than buying like a new Cascadia or something like that. So you've got to start looking at the math and thinking, is this going to be worth it? And then you look at the return on the investment in trucking half the time these days, and you think, man, and the price of fuel and everything. But yeah, gliders are kind of pricing themselves out of the markets. Fitzgerald was a good deal, but I gather they're shut down for doing that now. So you're involved with about 5 different parties building a good glider kit now, and the money adds up. Jay says, I've driven a PACCAR for 3 years now, got 334,000 miles on it, and still running strong. Jay, that's good to hear. I'm a supporter of PACCAR engines. I hope for good things for them. I'm only a supporter because I like PACCAR, but that's good to hear, because we need a little more variety in the market. Because in a Kenworth, for instance, you can only get a PACCAR or a Cummins. You can't get a Detroit in it anymore or anything like that unless you're building a glider kit. And I liked being able to have the choice.
Whipbone has asked if you've ever driven through Labrador or Newfoundland.
Yes, I have. I've only done it once. It was incredibly beautiful. The ferry ride bored the tears out of me, but Newfoundland was incredibly beautiful and windy. Man, I'll never forget the wind, but a beautiful province to drive in. As far as truckers go, the time I went across, I wasn't compensated for the ferry ride. Like they paid for the ferry, the carrier paid for the ferry, but I didn't pay for my time. And that's a long crossing, and I did it, in the winter months in bad weather. The ferry got caught in ice and stuff like that. It was a long time crossing. I forget how long that took, but I remember thinking, man, I took a hit on that crossing just from the money. But yeah, the province is beautiful.
The Post FX green.
Don't see it. Hamish K, thank you for the donation. I appreciate it. And the Postek, another donation from him as well. How long do you think training should be for new drivers? My company gave me 200 hours of drive time before I went solo. I'm impressed with the 200 hours, frankly. I think that's good. Some carriers think 25 or 50 is good. I think the more the better, honestly, because what can it hurt? The more the better. But 200 hours is at least something anyway. That's it's a few weeks, so it's certainly better than a lot of those schools. The more the better. It almost makes you wonder for new guys if they shouldn't run team for a while, but not an expedited team. Just a regular pace team with an older guy that had been at it for a while that could teach them some tricks and do that for like 6 months, 8 months or something like that, and just learn. Both guys or whoever bed down for the night and rest all night so they're not doing shift work and split driving and stuff like that. But I think that'd be the best way to learn.
OTR lady?
Michael Mueller, did I ever run the Coke? I was pretty much out of BC by the time they got that built. However, one time I did empty out in Seattle, and I went north to go back home just because I'd never been on the Coke before, and I wanted to try it. And back when they opened it up at first, it was a toll road, and I didn't care. I just wanted to run it to see how much different it was than the old route, because I liked the old route. You couldn't rocket through it, but it was pretty. It wound around the Fraser Canyon through Boston Bar. I found the Coke kind of straight up and straight down, and kind of boring as compared to the old route. And it certainly saved time, which I guess was the purpose of that. And it certainly saved money, because the old 2-lane through Boston Bar and all that would have been a fortune to fix and repair and add on lanes and stuff like that. So I can understand why they did it. I thought it was kind of a boring. It was like a super highway through the middle of the mountains, which I wasn't used to that, So, but it's probably a good thing it's there. I gather it's not a toll road anymore. I was required to do 60,000 truck miles with Prime. That's from OTR Lady. And I'm assuming you mean by that 60,000 miles with a trainer before they turned you loose on your own. I see nothing wrong with that. As long as the trainer is a decent person and you're actually learning something and they're not pressing you to meet schedules. Like, I know Werner's guilty of that. They'll take a brand new guy, stick him in with another trainer that's got 2 months, and they'll just run you like raped apes. I don't agree with that. I think if it's a paced, steady, driving, learning experience, I think that's a good thing.
Just a quick second to say hello to GP Transco in the chat.
Hello, GP Transco. Are you getting any weather down there today? Everybody else seems to be getting it. I hope things are going well for you guys. I'm looking forward to when you get those Teslas, boy. I'm just hoping. I was just talking to Kathy about it. She said the COVID will still be running probably in the spring, and I was wanting to know because I was going to pop down there, but curses on the damn pandemic anyway. What made me decide to become a truck driver? I always liked to drive. I always liked to drive anything with wheels on it or boats or anything like that moved. And I'd see those big produce trucks coming into the market down in Toronto where they're all lit up, and they were big cab overs at the time, And I just look at those things going by and think, man, that's what I wanted to do. And as soon as I was old enough to do it, that's what I got into. Yeah, there's something GP Transco should know. I've had a few guys up here in Canada hoping that you'll open a branch or a yard up here because they want to drive for GP Transco. Just so you know. Dave, should the Peterbilt do a Peterbilt 389 electric truck? Josh, you're just full of these hot questions today. Good one. I don't know how good the 389 would be as an electric truck because of the drag that it has, just because of the shape. That's why they make those trucks, the electric trucks, so slippery looking, I think, is to reduce as much drag as possible, because it probably drains the battery faster otherwise. So, like if you could have a 389 Pete that looked really cool but could only do 100 miles before the battery went dead, that'd be fun to drive. I'm not sure how practical it would be though for the industry. Dave, how much is the Tesla truck? Doug Ackerman. I have no idea how much one of those things are. But GP's in the house. If they want to answer that, they'd certainly be in the know. I'll be curious to see if they answer, because my take is that they're more expensive than a regular Class 8 highway truck. But I don't know. I haven't priced one out ever. No.
What do you think of the new transport companies hauling cheap freight?
John Lee, what do I think of the new transport companies hauling cheap freight? That's been one of the biggest problems with deregulation, and it's been going on since deregulation in 1980. And I think, I don't know how to cope with that, because there'll always be someone that wants to do it cheaper. I am not in favor of that. There were certain things about regulated trucking that I liked, that they had a set rate and you couldn't go below that, and everybody made money. And deregulation, it was, I understand why they did it, but in the long term it's hurt the trucking industry. And I don't agree with anybody hauling cheap freight, but these days you don't seem to be able to stop them hardly anymore. All you can do is go with a good carrier that demands decent rates for their moves and gets it from customers, and then passes that on to the drivers. Because if you're hauling cheap freight, you're not going to make any money at the end of the day, and the whole object of the game here is to make money. Don't see it. Here's Corey here. Have I ever run through Maine? I deliver for Coca-Cola through northern Maine, and I love the drive. That's from Corey, and the donation as well. Thank you, Corey. Appreciate the donation. Yes, I have, and I'm struggling to recall the number of that highway that I ran up into. I was in Bangor, Maine, and I ran up through the woods into some little town in New Brunswick. The border was in New Brunswick. It was a pretty drive, like a really pretty drive. It's not something I would have cared to do at night, because I gather there were quite a few moose in the area, and it's all 2-lane road when I did it, of course. But yeah, it was a really pretty drive. Virtually no place to park. Only a couple little stores and stuff where you could stop and get a Coke. Excuse me, Coke. But yeah, a really pretty drive through there.
Adrian Sanchez, what do you think of Challenger to get my 1-year experience?
Challenger is a good carrier. I wouldn't be afraid of going to Challenger at all. So no, they're a good carrier, good equipment, like everything about them. Trucker Harold. If they go electric, who's going to do the pre-trips? Safety concern there. Yeah, Trucker Harold, good point. There's all sorts of issues they're going to have and adjustment issues, and yeah, that's tip of the iceberg, but yeah, you're onto it. Good question. Andrew Mitchell says electric trucks won't be a thing in Saskatchewan until they put the charging stations in the 2+ hour lineup at Cargill. Yeah, the infrastructure that's got to go with these electric trucks is crucial. And you can pump out the trucks, but if you don't have the plugins and the infrastructure, you're not going to get very far.
What's your opinion on buying, building versus financing?
Well, Kathy'd be more of an expert on that than I would be, but trucks are so expensive these days that you've got to finance them in some form. Nobody can afford to take $200,000 out of their bank account because no one's got that much in there. But it depends on your tax situation. We bought some outright, some we'd lease to purchase at the end and buy them out then. But I'd never do like a lease to buy deal with a carrier. I'd never do that.
That's a capital lease we did.
See, I knew Kathy'd know more about it than I would, but yeah, you don't want to do it's the capital lease.
We weren't lease operators.
No, we weren't lease operators. We owned our trucks. What are my thoughts on European cabovers and their solutions to gas emissions? Loach, I've said before I like the look of the European trucks, the cabovers. I particularly like the Scania. Love to drive one. I don't know how they handle their gas emissions for those trucks. I'm not familiar with the mechanics of it at all because, frankly, I've never even seen one, just in pictures. I'd love to spend some time driving one and crawling all around it and through it to see how it works. I haven't had that chance, but I'd love to. There is a question I want to ask about trucks, and I see Hamish mentioned Cascadias. Someone was telling me the other day in chat that a lot of the new drop nose trucks are basically the new cabovers, and he pointed out that the engine sits on the steering axle the way a cabover did. And something, I don't know if this is true or not, so I'm asking. Some of these new trucks, like the Cascadia and the Volvo, do the engines actually protrude into the cabs? And if that's so, do people that drive these trucks find that they have emissions coming through the floors of the dog houses? And do you find they're noisy? Because that was one of the problems we used to have with the cabovers. They'd be hot inside because the motor was there, and sometimes they'd smell, and they were noisy. So I'd like to know if the new drop nose trucks, if that's even true for them. I've never driven one. I've never driven a Cascadia or anything like that, and I'd love to know if the engine actually sits in the cab with you guys. Let me know, because I'd be curious, and I never even thought of it that way. Stone Archer, what are my thoughts on starting your own trucking company? It would depend on your situation. Everybody's situation is different. When we had ours, we lived in a small town. We serviced a couple of customers that we knew personally, and it was really good for us. But I think I see a lot of guys trying to start their own little trucking companies and live on load boards. I wouldn't recommend that for anybody. If you've got good direct customers and they're willing to pay you fairly, absolutely go for it. Price it all out first for equipment and expenses and insurance and stuff. But if you're in a huge market and you're using the load board, I wouldn't recommend that to anybody. And Bull Holland Bulldog makes a good point. To make real money in trucking these days, you need to be specialized, livestock or something dedicated, not through a broker, just as I say. And he's absolutely right.
Lyndon Johnson says, I drive a lost it already. I drive a Cascadia. He was just commenting what you were saying about Cascadias. I drive a Cascadia and the engine barely sits under the windshield. No fumes in the cab either.
So you can't even really tell it's there, eh? It's just kind of sticks into the cab beside your fuel pedal and stuff. Not intrusive at all. Okay, well, I didn't know, so that's good to know. Good to hear. SoCal Sandman, and I knew he'd come back to me here. He says the Volvo doesn't have that, so good to know. Because I thought, well, geez, I never even thought of that, but I couldn't see that being very good if it did intrude into the cab. Glad to find out that it doesn't.
Chris Sosa, thank you very much for the donation and the support. Much appreciated.
Chris, thank you. Appreciate it. SoCal Sandman, in the event of a crash in a Volvo, the engine is designed to drop down instead of coming in and injuring the driver. Crucially important. That's a hell of a good design feature. And you know what? I do think I knew that anyway, but yeah, I had read that. And there's something that separates the Volvos from probably the Cascadias, I would dare say. I don't know if that would be true of the Cascadia, but that's pretty damn important.
Jake comments, I'm 19 years old with my own interstate authority hauling grain for a friend of mine. Got any advice for me now and for future?
Man, if you're running a good thing, stick with it and service the living hell out of your customers. That's all I can tell you. Make sure you keep an eye on your costs, so when you need to increase the rate, you can do that. But if you've got a good deal, stick with it, because they're few and far between out here.
Under promise and over deliver.
Yes, exactly. Under promise and over deliver. Service the heck out of the customer. Timothy Platt says, Cascadia rides nice, but has no guts. Well, you can hardly blame the motor there, or the truck, Timothy. You'd have to look at the motor, but all sorts of companies just cut back their engines so badly in an attempt to save fuel. And it does save them fuel, but some of them are ridiculous. Some of them, you roll along, the truck sees a hill and it just slows down just looking at it. You can't be driving like that. But there's a fine balance there somewhere. I'm all for saving fuel, but you can't chop the motor that much. You'll lose drivers.
A concerned citizen, what do you think about the Pete 389 going with an all-digital dashboard?
We were talking about that here a little earlier. Someone else brought that up, and I'm kind of an old-fashioned guy. You've probably noticed that. So I really like the gauges. I was mad when they got rid of the toggle switches and went to like a rocker switch in the Kenworths. So I don't know. It'll take a while to get used to. I prefer the gauges, frankly. I don't know why they're doing that, but just to modernize the truck, probably. I think I like the gauges better. In fact, I know I do.
And don't forget, this is the guy who still carries a flip phone, too.
That's true. I have a flip phone. This social media thing isn't bothering me when it comes to the iPhones. Twitter could cut me off and I wouldn't even know.
Someone said, did you see my comment earlier about Stephen's transport? No, I did not. Can you go again?
Yes, please. It was Thomas. No, I didn't. We didn't see it. Do it again, Thomas. We want to
Rosemary Violet, what is the hardest part to getting the CDL? I am trying to get one, so should I go to trucking school? I think that's her question.
I would look at the community colleges as a way of getting your CDL license. I think that's my first choice these days. They're just a more thorough job than outside training schools.
More thorough program.
Pardon me?
A more thorough program.
A more thorough program. But yeah, I'd go with a community college angle for that. Whipbone says Nan's husband still has a flip phone. So do I. Nothing wrong with him. I had an iPhone for a while. I just didn't care for it.
Yeah, but when he needs to text somebody, he asks me to text because he can't text from his flip phone.
That's true. And the Lettuce King likes to text. He's into texting now.
So me and the Lettuce King are on par. And we can communicate. We know what's shaking out there.
Yeah.
But not you.
And the other thing that does bug me, I have to admit, is people that can send pictures back and forth, and I can't do that on my phone. And that's a little annoying, I got to admit. I'd like to be able to do that.
Rosemary says she doesn't have the money, I assume, for the community college programs, but a lot of those community colleges have grant programs available.
I was just going to say the same thing. In fact, Indiana recently announced that there are enough grants available in the state of Indiana to virtually cover the entire cost of a college program for getting your license. So, God, cross your fingers and check it out. And if you live in Indiana, I can already tell you've got it made. Now, Chris Soes is asking a question, and we keep missing it. He says,
Yes, I still don't see it.
Okay.
If you'd repost it, but I don't see anything.
Chris, I'm scanning back to see if I can find it.
Grilled Mortal has asked if you would like an analog 4-watt phone bag. Bag phone, rather.
I had one of those. It was like an army green bag, and you plug it into the cigarette lighter. I cannot find his question.
No, I've looked. I can't find it.
Send the question again.
No, just repost it.
Yes, repost it. I can see him asking a couple of times, but I can't see the original question. Look at the Mercedes Actros for the cab-over version of the cab. And that Mercedes Actros, if I'm saying it correctly, is a sharp-looking truck. I like the look of those things.
Hamish K, thank you very much once again for the support today in chat. Didn't realize that tractor units with winches, new and old, require 2 sticks and toothpicks. You just like the way that sounds.
Hamish,
you just like rhyming.
I know you're in England, Hamish, so you just can't have that expression over there. So I'd like, because that's an old tried and true over here. I'd like to know where you learned that, but good for you. That's an oldie but a goodie. Got a chuckle out of me there.
A concerned citizen, one nitpick I hear from a lot of the Kenworth guys is the lack of leg space, and in the classic model, the W9s and things. But they also have a studio sleeper. I wanted a 389, but with, and that was the end of it.
I haven't been in to the newest Kenworths, but they used to be when they, and my W9s suffered from this, is you could only put the driver's seat back so far before you hit the bunk wall, and it restricted the legroom, and I found it annoying. And Pete didn't have that because they had the Unibuilt bunk. I'd like to know if Kenworth ever did fix that, because I thought that was a problem. Cool chick, any stories about evading tornadoes while trucking?
Actually, make sure that everybody, you guys go and vote Pete or Kenworth in YouTube community for our poll. A lot of people have been mentioning the one thing that they don't like about the Kenworths, or the lack of legroom. So there's a lot of comments about that.
Trucker Herald, new emission laws have destroyed today's trucks. Yes, they have. Did we find the comment about Stevens Transport? We're missing stuff here. Don't know what's going on.
Dave, what is your opinion about V8 engines? Scania still makes V8s, and they are actually good on fuel. That was Igor.
Igor, I've been reading, man, they're new. I think it's like 777 horse V8. I've seen pictures of it. I've read reports on it. It's supposed to be an incredible engine. It's one of the hottest reasons I'm at to try a Scania, and I want to try one with that engine. It's supposed to be amazing. I guess it pulls like Jack the Bear. I guess it gets great mileage, and they can squeeze it into one of those trucks. So I want to see it. The pictures of that engine alone are just awesome. I hope we get them over here. SoCal Sandman, where's the Lettuce King today? He's up in Wingham at Stretch's shop, and they're working on redoing a 359 up in there. I called him there yesterday. I dragged him out from underneath the truck on the creeper board just to answer the phone. So I know that's where he is.
Hey, Kyle, thanks very much again for the donation in the chat. Thank you very much for the support. And also Chris as well, thank you very much for the donation and for the support.
Yes.
Much appreciated.
Kyle and Chris, thank you. Thank you both. We do appreciate it. Thank you. OTR Ogre, still catching up natural gas or electric truck of the future, plus the same amount of energy we're spending right now pumping exhaust down the road could produce more energy out of the power plant. Yeah, they've got a long way to go when it comes to engine efficiency too. You're right.
Comment from G. I'm in Calgary, Alberta, just about to obtain my Class 1 melt. I want to do LCV and tanker, chemical tankers, but I would like to stay regional to keep a stable marriage. I'm 50 years old, and I'm not a young lad anymore.
Well, I've got a few things to say about that. I would highly recommend regional in your situation. I would steer you away from those road trains. I don't like those at all, not a bit. So I would go for the regional, frankly, and stay close to home and keep your marriage together. That's my thought on that anyway.
Hey, Kyle, thanks again for the support in the chat. You're killing it this afternoon.
Yes, thank you, Kyle.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Will Billy the Hillbilly says, does the maintenance costs with older trucks outweigh the pros and no emissions and a simpler truck? And that's something that's a case-by-case basis, and you've got to track it. I found, in our case, depending on the truck, if you had a good truck, like this last one that we still have, was that the maintenance costs were much lower than buying a new truck, and that's why we did it that way. But we would track the repairs on it to make sure the truck wasn't starting to break us. But no, and all sorts of guys, Pennsylvania, that whole state, those guys are just rebuilding and glider kitting everything down there. And at least you know what you've got. At least you know what you've got. It won't let you down with an emissions issue. Kenworth has a much larger sleeper than Peterbilt. Kenworth Studio Sleeper is the nicest factory bunk on the market, bar none. Beautiful, beautiful sleeper. I even prefer the studio to some of the custom made bunks. It's a little heavier, but yeah, beautiful bunk. That's from Stone Archer. Yes.
Thomas.
Comment from Thomas. I'm a lease operator for them. I lease, not lease purchase. Went to school through them. Not a bad word to say. Great trainer, consistent miles. Leasing works for me.
You gotta repeat all of that.
Read it.
I don't see it. You.
Okay, do that again.
Comment from Thomas. I'm a lease operator for them. I lease, not lease purchase. I went to school through them. Not a bad word to say. Great trainer, consistent miles. Leasing works for me.
Good to hear. That's Stevens we're talking about here, I assume.
I don't know. I wasn't following.
But yeah, that's good to hear. Stevens is a big carrier, and they've got an awful lot of good freight. They've got Nestle as a customer, a big customer. So it's good to hear they're treating you well. I'm glad to hear that. Captain Nice Guy with a big donation. Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. Just letting you know that I finished your book. Oh, thanks. Love the whole thing. Love the Simon stories and the bit with the Lettuce King at the end. If you do another, you've got a guaranteed buyer. Captain Nice Guy. Thank you, sir. I really appreciate all of that. I do. Nice of you to say so. I'm glad you enjoyed it, too. Old school truck driver says Caterpillar forever. My choice, yep.
Yes, near the end of that audiobook, we all kind of got the giggles there and couldn't get it stopped.
Hamish K tested negative for COVID. I guess you're grateful for that. I'm glad. That's good to hear. Good. Happy New Year from Chris Souza. I found that comment, Chris, before it rolled by. Happy New Year to you, sir. Appreciate it.
Chaos, what do you think about working for Walmart?
I think Walmart's a great fleet to work for. They don't have their own fleet up here in Canada, or I'd be all over those guys. But they are one of the top fleets to work for. Nice equipment, fair pay. Some of those guys are dragging in six figures. Don't know. I think Walmart would be a great fleet to work for. Daniel Meredith with a donation. Daniel, thank you, sir. Thank you. Swift wants me to return and work for them, and I told them I didn't want to make any money with you. I didn't make any money with you guys and was away from home for months. I will definitely stay with YRC as a yard driver. Never return to Swift. Oh, Daniel, smart call, I have to say. You know, and you could get one guy at Swift promising you the world, make you come over there and find out the next guy isn't going to keep the promise for you. Good to stay where you are. Wise choice. Yeah, Trucker Herald says lots of OTR drivers are turning to work as yard jockeys. And yeah, I can see why. It's by the hour. You get home every night. All sorts of pluses to it. I'd certainly consider doing that.
Comment from Whipbone. Hard finding a job fresh out of school. I've applied everywhere and even have my own truck ready for the road. Can't come up with the 30 grand for insurance. Need a lease.
Huh.
You make payments on the 30 grand insurance. Yeah. That's high insurance. Wow.
Yeah, that's
holy smokes.
That's no deal on the insurance.
Wow. That's really stiff.
Now here's Chris again. My DOT MC is in process. What permit? What's needed? Thanks in advance. Where do you want to run, Chris? Where do you want to run? If you're just doing local, you only need operating authority for the states that you're going to run in. If you're going to run over the road, you're probably just as well to get the whole darn package minus Alaska and Hawaii, because it'll be cheaper that way. And all sorts of companies out there can help you with that, because the paperwork is so extensive. You might want to go that way. But you need authority for every state you're going to run in. They used to call them cab cards. They'd print off a cab card, and it would show you what states you were allowed in and what weights you were allowed to have in those states and that type of thing. I don't know if they still use the cab card now, but yeah, you want to have the proper authority before you get out there, because the scale guys are experts at finding what you don't have.
Comment from Thomas. On a personal note, your channel is why I got into trucking and followed in my late dad's footsteps. You remind me of him. Thank you, sir. I love the stories.
Well, thanks, Thomas. Nice of you to say. It's, if your dad or your uncles or somebody like that was in trucking, it's something that just kind of sticks with you and stays with you. It's almost like you're following the family tradition, and I always think that's nice when I see that. So I'm flattered by your praise as well, Thomas. Thank you for saying so. Appreciate it.
The Bull Holland Bulldog says, Dave, why don't you ever try pulling cattle? And I just put a note in the chat that he's scared of cows. He has nightmares about cows.
When I was young and I was learning to drive, I went out with a friend of my dad's who pulled bull racks. And the first few things, what are you laughing at? The first few things I noticed were that the girls would rock and roll in the trailer all night long, and the truck would be bouncing up and down. And this is in the days before air ride, and the whole truck would be rocking and rolling all night. You couldn't get any sleep. The next thing I didn't like about it was that they expected you to clean out those trailers after you unloaded. And that wasn't a favorite part of my job either, and especially when it was really cold outside. Although you couldn't win, because in the summer it was really warm and it smelled worse. So I liked bull racks. I was attracted to it because most of those guys run long distance stuff, and that was what I was interested in. But a couple other things about it, but the not being able to sleep in the truck was probably the worst part of it for me. I could have plugged my nose for the trailer cleaning, but I just couldn't sleep in the trucks.
Grilled Mortal says you don't haul cows because you once pulled a bull out of the Seguin River.
I like eating them. I don't like hauling them. And you've got to be a little bit worried about freight that can kick you in the head while you're loading it too. That was never a big fond point of mine either.
Well, you're not supposed to put your head down there.
Well, when you're pushing them up the ramp, you're right behind them. And every once in a while, one of those girls doesn't like that. The old guy that was training me, I saw him get hoofed, and I thought, man, and he'd been around it for years.
That's what they do.
Well, I don't like that.
Aww.
He got it right in the chest. It knocked him right down to the bottom of the ramp.
You need a Kevlar vest on there.
Yeah, I should have a Kevlar vest.
Okay, a couple more quickly.
Yeah. A friend of mine here in Bakersfield, California, this is from Chris Keller, sold his truck and trailer, retired after about a year. He went to get the authority and insurance back. The lowest quote he got for insurance was $45,000 for the first 3 years. Insurance is on its way up. And insurance companies are like piranha. Boy, they see an opening, they just jump on it. When they see the industry starting to make a little money, they up the rates.
But look what the repair rate is now, though. So how can you blame them? They have to fix it.
And Kathy says, look at the repair rate now too, and all the crashes they're having and stuff like that. So you can kind of see their side. There's a lot more traffic. There are a lot more crashes. A lot more guys having to use their insurance to repair the equipment. It's a vicious cycle. Chris Keller, 50 years plus experience and no accidents, no tickets. Chris, you've got something to be really proud of there. Very good. Way to go. Whipbone says backing up the B train is the same as a 53. You can do the same thing on the road in American Truck Simulator. Just take your time. We've ordered an American Truck Simulator. It hasn't arrived yet.
It's at the front door.
Oh, it's here. It's here. It's here.
A concerned citizen. I'm an OTR driver with a company that got bought out, by US Express, but I still get decent miles. I average over 600 miles a day, and if I get 9,700 miles a month or over, I get a $500 bonus. Plus, for over, probably 9,700, I would think.
Huh, that sounds like an all right deal right now. Let's hope US Express doesn't screw that up. But no, that's respectable.
Jay comments, I've got $5,000 in insurance and I'm with Progressive. That is really good. In 2004, for a fleet, we paid about $4,600 a truck per unit. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, you're doing
That's really good.
well there, Jay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kyle says, I thought the trucks were supposed to be getting safer, which would make insurance cheaper. But,
Well,
yeah.
more idiots on the road.
More idiots on the road.
Okay, one more. Wrap it up.
I'm learning just how bad parking is on the eastern seaboard. So many of these trucks and truck stops are near impossible to fit in with a highway truck and a 53-footer, and they're almost always full. Yeah, James Stemler, and that's one of the reasons I avoided the eastern seaboard, because they've got a real truck issue for parking there, and it's just, there is nowhere to land. Half the places aren't safe unless you land in a truck stop. So yeah, Eastern Seaboard has a serious issue that way, and they don't seem to be working at correcting it, which just amazes me. I know all sorts of guys now that will not run the Eastern Seaboard for just that reason. You've got to have a safe place to park and eat and stuff like that. You have to. It's a necessity for us over the road guys. Daniel Meredith with a donation. Thanks, Daniel. Appreciate that. A lot of new drivers don't Jake brake. Smell a lot of braking. Is that right? Yeah. I thought Jake's brakes were the handiest thing to come down the pike ever. But if you're smelling a lot of brake on the hills and stuff like Parley's, something's wrong. Although not everybody, believe it or not, even even today, companies are buying new trucks without Jake brakes in them. And I think that's crazy.
Okay, wrap it up.
Well, I guess we'll wrap it up for today. Thank you all for joining us. Appreciate the donations and everything, people. Helps us out, helps us keep current. It's going to pay for this American Truck Simulator. We're going to learn how to drive. I got a feeling that Nick's going to be a whole lot better driver on that thing than me. We'll find out. Take care. Stay safe. Yes? What am I forgetting? Oh, and what? The lettuce king just crawled out from underneath the truck, and he's just joining us here now. Lettuce King, what do you have to say for yourself? I haven't gotten a comment yet. What's he saying? Is he all covered with grease? So Cal Sandman's excited to see him. We're always excited to hear from him. He's always been up to something new and exciting. He doesn't live a day that's dull.
Captain Excitement.
Captain Excitement. I still don't see his comment, but glad he's here anyway. Oh, there it is. In Da House. He learned to talk like that running Chicago. In Da House. Any.
You have 2 donations to acknowledge?
Oh. Will Billy the Hillbilly with a $20 donation. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And Kyle with a $5 donation. Thank you very much, you guys. I appreciate it. I do. I'm happy people just join us and listen to us, but the donations make it extra good for us. Thank you. Anyway, stay safe, take care, keep the rubber side down, and we'll see you all on the back haul. Good night, everybody.